Hey, what's good, cannabis investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from April 29th to May 5th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. And there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. Try to think of these videos as a time capsule. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the US cannabis industry, identify top US MSOs that you think will be worth more in the future than they are now based on their current market caps, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. Now, I want to apologize for missing last week's video. Not only did I get home like 12 hours later than expected, but I also ended up getting food poisoning, and so that's the main reason I couldn't make a video. But maybe I should take a week off more often, because while this isn't the official statement from the government yet, the rumors are out and Schedule 3 is happening. Is US poised to ease restrictions on cannabis in historic shift? This came from W. Guardio. I saw it first reported from AP, the Associated Press. But while we all know it's not getting descheduled outright, which would be the best case scenario, we'll take the small win in the near term. And so this is, I guess, just copying what the Associated Press had reported earlier. You're all aware of this. And what a way to start the week it was, as every cannabis name nearly was halted at one point. Massive price action on the day of the rumor coming out. While just wanted to share this for those of you that think this industry is a pump and dump, possibly, you can think whatever you'd like, but if you've been in this industry for a long time, Weed Street 420 is an example of someone that's been playing this industry through the cycles over time. He's been bearish, he's been bullish, but clearly, on one day when we get that news, look what he made back. I made back roughly $9,600, which is just a reminder to zoom out and relax. We got the best possible reassurance we could have on Tuesday, and while we might just have to wait a few more weeks for the next step, and then the next step, it's annoying. We all want it to happen at once, but it's reassurance that we're getting it. It's just a matter of being patient. And that's not even his best day ever. Flashback to November 8th, 2021, roughly a year after the Dems took over, flipped the House and Senate, and showed us their true colors, as they haven't done shit. This was roughly 9 months after we hit the February highs too. And so I'm not sure exactly what caused this big spike. It was either the rumor of SAFE making it into the NDAA for the first time, or Nancy Mace dropping her States Reform Act, which is by far the best legalization legislation we've seen to date. And while I didn't even put it in this video, I'm sure you're all aware, Schmuck and Booker reintroduced CAOA, but what a fucking waste of time. So didn't even bother covering it. Well, do the right thing, finding more gems for us. Boris Jordan says he talked to the DEA today, and he was told that the target is September 1 for final rule of Schedule 3 happening. So again, take this with a grain of salt, folks. Boris has been wrong in the past. He's also been right, and it's just taken him time to be correct. So PR will likely be published 1 to 2 weeks after Office of Management and Budget review, then 60-day comment period. DEA took extra 2 months in this process to make sure it stands up in court. So it's promising. And he also said one of the large US exchanges contacted us today. They're happy to start a conversation. And so this looks more promising than ever before, folks, and I will show you why. Now, this is actually a clip from that chat, so let me play it for y'all.
And that this should be right. That's what they're going to try and do. But the fact is, the DEA has the right to do this. And if they did it right and they followed all the rules, which we believe they've done, that's what we were told today on our 1 hour call that we had, then, it's unlikely. But there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be headlines. You're going to hear headlines that there's a lawsuit filed, and this lawsuit filed, and that lawsuit filed. You're going to have Sam out there. You're going to have everyone that doesn't want this to happen is going to come out over the next, 3 to 4 months, and they're going to come out against this. We're very confident, and I want to reiterate, even though that's going to happen, this will go through. We heard this from very important people today. The work has been done in this, and it's very difficult to challenge this at this point in time.
I'd like to agree with him, but I want to ask you, what do you think? Do you think what he's saying holds weight? Or do you think there's going to be some fuckery? I really don't think they would have gone through all of the work in order to not allow it to actually happen. We know the Dems need it. So let me know in the comments what you think, folks. But more on this as we string along all the clues and evidence. Do the right thing, share this one. There's going to be a new Cole Memo that will be issued. Quote from Earl Blumenaur. And so this came from this US Cannabis Counsel webinar, I think. So I'll post that link in the comments. And as always, all the links will be in the comments. But great tweet from Patient Momentum. Call me crazy, but I'm expecting that the new revised memo, along with DEA proposed ruling, for now, will be strong enough to let major US exchanges finally accept MSO applications and permit uplisting right away. Because why would they go through all the work of Schedule 3 without helping the banks and making sure they can make the most money possible plus investors, hence us, right? And you just think about a big picture, we were all just so dang early. And with that, moving forward, this was hot off the press. Do the right thing again. This guy is on fire. I wonder who this person is, but I missed this one from early April. This is a clip from an interview with Glass House. But the main thing, which came out 13 hours ago, even more recently, was that we did get Boris's quotes publicized in MarketWatch. And we'll get to that story next. But the main thing just to highlight is this quote quickly from Graham Farage, something from Glass House.
I think it will be continued to be led by the states, but when Schedule 3 does happen, it is going to have far more reaching cascading effects. It's going to open the doors for a whole bunch of things. We've heard now from the New York Stock Exchange as well as the NYSE that Schedule 3 is the hurdle that they're looking for uplisting.
So, I mean, technically Schedule 1 was the hurdle and Schedule 3 is the solution. Well, it's very well just more speculation. I'm not trying to mislead. I just want to present all the clues so you can paint as clear a picture as an investor yourself for what could happen in the long term. And I say that mainly because the source of this question, could American growers be next, is the same source. It's just Boris from an X Spaces. Though the Jefferies analyst seems to be somewhat swayed by it, but the main thing of this article is that Nasdaq finally warming up to Canadian cannabis companies with U.S. exposure. And we're going to get into this a bit more later, but Sundial bought some U.S. assets similar to how Canopy structured their deal, and you'd have to think, well, if Sundial is a Canadian company and Canopy is a Canadian company and they can trade on the Nasdaq or U.S. major stock exchange and they can own U.S. assets, but MSOs can't? Like, in the U.S.? What world are we living in? So just wanted to share this because it kind of touches on that speculation, and so a bit more about that deal too and how that's going to work. So pause to read if you're interested. As always, links are in the comments, but the main thing to highlight is that another tidbit of information about a potential new memo coming out. And so while the Cole Memo was a huge deal way back when it did come out and it helped for the period of time, it was rescinded by the Trump administration, and it looks like there could be a new potential Garland memo in the next few weeks on top of the whole sort of next steps of this process. So surprised this isn't getting more attention. Sklamberg, who I've mentioned in past videos, was a former deputy commissioner at the FDA and also on the FDA's cannabis working group. He predicted we would get an HHS announcement for Schedule 3 a few weeks before it happened, and we did. And so from the Cannabis Business Times, I will put this link in the comments as well. But it's at the White House. You would think that it'll move pretty quickly given that the whole world knows that they're looking at it. And it would be the strangest thing in the world if OMB all of a sudden were to reverse this. And so you imagine that they'll do it pretty quickly. There will be a comment period of, say, 2-3 months, and then there will be a final rule. And so that actually lines up with September, surprisingly. Sklamberg said he would be very surprised if a final rule is not issued this year before the administration ends, and probably before November, because the Dems desperately need any sort of victory. They campaigned on this 4 years ago, and they haven't done shit. So they have to put their money where their mouth is and keep their word. And this is coming from James Cole himself. And so mentioning the OMB, which I believe is the Office of Management and Budgeting, as speculated previously, they will review the proposed rule before it is published in the Federal Register. And so we're waiting on them to review the proposed rule, and then it gets published. There's no minimum amount of time for the review, but max limit is 90 days apparently. And so we'll see how urgently the OBM is going to proceed here. But of course, if the Dems want the victory, they want to get this done before the election, which would lead us to believe they want to act sooner than later, possibly imminently. But it's out of our control. So try and enjoy yourselves. Have a great summer. It's just getting warmer and more beautiful outside. And a reminder that Step 3 was the biggest hurdle. We're now at Step 4, and it could just be smooth sailing from here. So very exciting times ahead. And so while we're waiting on the OMB to do their thing and then post it to the Federal Register, interesting to note, things keep getting spicier. This guy's on fire. The OLC memo, and so this is the DOJ's Office of Legal Counsel, so you think this would be the new Garland memo, similar to the Cole memo in the past, will be released in tandem with the NPRM, which is the DEA's Notice of Public Rulemaking in the Federal Register, which we believe has to do with also the conclusion of whatever OMB is doing and the final publication of all this, making it official. So great times ahead. Link below in the comments. Let me know what you think. The last bit on this, we actually have an X Spaces where our favorite cannabis lawyer, Shane Pennington, was on with Pablo to talk rescheduling. Now, keep in mind, this is a speculative timeline from Todd Harrison, and so it doesn't mean it's true in any sort of way, but just wanted to share it to kind of piggyback off of all the points I've been making and what we're expecting from now until, say, September or into the election. And so I did listen to some of this, but not the whole thing. I'm going to try and listen to a lot of these clips later today, but that link will be in the comments if you want to tune in. But very promising news out of Europe, as Germany's Pillar 2 is already being worked on. It could be here far sooner than expected, which is beautiful music to our ears, because anyone in the right mind understands that if you take cannabis out of your narcotics list and legalize it, but don't create a legal market to compete with the black market, you're just going to create a stronger black market. And fortunately, Germany saw that sooner than later, as they're going to seek to implement a Switzerland-style adult use cannabis pilot project model that's being worked on now. And so no timeline, unfortunately, but the two reasons they came to this conclusion, it'll be regulated under the current CanG law, meaning a separate law would not need to be passed to push it through, so they can edit the legislation. And secondly, Pillar 2 was first proposed. Switzerland's own pilot project had expanded and matured significantly, providing Germany with a reliable and effective model to work from, essentially meaning that legalization worked in Switzerland like it's worked in states in the US and Canada, and so time to act. And so more here if you wanted to pause to read, but I don't believe, so just submitted proposals are back May 10th. That's the rough timeline. So of course I'd like to report when we actually have definitive timelines and answers to work from, but this is what we have so far. So at least good to know that Germany is working on that, and we might see a commercial market sooner than later. While it's still insane to think at the same time, well, that's Furtick, I don't think anyone's listening to you because, man, you are just a propagandist for the mainstream. It's just sad, though, that she is reporting on something that should not be happening in the first place. I just heard from another cannabis operator that there were 2 more seizures of state-licensed cannabis by the CBP in New Mexico yesterday, and it's legal in Mexico. This is absolute horseshit. And so this is why we've needed this solution of descheduling for 50, 70 years. We'll take the next best incremental step for now as we continue to push, but it's wild that this does exist. While at the same time, the DEA just confirmed that cannabis is going to go to Schedule 3 because it's medicine, right? And on that point, highlighting the miracle medicine that it is, and we will find out more about as we can research it more when restrictions are loosened. But from Carger, from March 14th, 2024, the use of THC is associated with an increase in survival time in palliative care patients, a retrospective multi-center cohort study. Very fascinating. So you can pause to read the entire abstract, but fascinating is a total of 9,419 patients with a survival time of at least 7 days after inclusion were included in the analysis into 3 groups. One was without THC, the second was with THC in low dosages, less than 4.7 milligrams a day, and the third was THC in higher doses. And get the conclusion. Use of THC is associated with significant increase in survival time in ambulatory palliative patients, which survive longer than 7 days the initiation of THC prescription, and which use of THC was greater than 4.7 milligrams. So that seems fascinating to me. The more THC, the increased survival time. Let me know in the comments what you think, but isn't that more reason to deschedule outright so we can do all the studies? While Psychology Today shares preventing memory loss with cannabis, some parts of the brain respond positively to regular cannabis exposure. What do you know? And so key points, not going to go through the whole article, but recent investigations have shown that stimulating the brain's cannabinoid receptors may be protective. The contents of cannabis may offer protection from the effects of stroke, chronic pain, and inflammation, and cannabis may restore neurogenesis and neuroplasticity in the aging brain by reducing inflammation. We all knew that. Most of the world has no idea, though, so more here if you wanted to pause to read, and you can go through this on how cannabis could be more beneficial to the brain than we're all led on, as the false propaganda was. That was the point of it all. But with that last one, from Politico Pro even, highlighting what prohibitionists love to scream about, but we all know that it's fake and false, and it's been proven wrong by the data. Legalized weed is not associated with increased youth use, study says. Coming from Politico Pro, one of their own right-wing publications. So findings are from a new study in JAMA Psychiatry, which looked at 208,000 national respondents and more than 1.5 million state respondents, surveying 9th to 12th graders every 2 years from 1993 to 2021. Fascinating. So a well done in-depth study from the looks of it. More here if you wanted to pause to read to go through it. Just don't want to make this video too long. All the links will be in the comments, but it's just more data that adds to what we already know. That the prohibitionists are fucking cowards and liars. And so, where are we now, folks? Well, you tell me. But I certainly don't think he's wrong. He says, we're at the first circle, and I think that's fitting. And while I wanted to share this chart, for whatever reason, New Cannabis Ventures, this page isn't loading. But looking at Canada, year to date, obviously Canadian companies are not US MSOs, but the US MSOs should perform that much better when we finally get our day. Just highlighting that this literally does look like we'd be at the first circle. Doesn't it, right? And the second circle, IPO on major exchange, will be the second circle. Think back to when Constellation Brands invested $4 billion into Canopy, what we saw there in Canada. We're going to have a US version. Now, is the site fixed yet? Unfortunately not. But I imagine if we look at this site and go year to date, from year to date, it very much will also look like we are at this first circle just awaiting take. This great visual is in response to a tweet from someone at Massive Spec, so take what he says with a grain of salt, though he clearly sees what we see, hence why he's paying very close attention. And it's so hard not to speculate when all the writing's on the wall and so much manipulation is trying to keep everything at bay until the floodgates open. And so thank you, though, Massive Spec, for summarizing the Higher Exchanges podcast with Boris Jordan. Of course, the link to the podcast will be in the comments, as will this tweet if you wanted to read more about the summary, if you didn't have time to listen fully. But lots to look forward to this summer, and it's just a matter of us being patient and waiting for time to unfold, because it seems so much work is put in. They're not going to not allow it at this point. And the U.S. is desperate for the cash. They need money in the banking system as the U.S. economy to receive $112.4 billion boost from cannabis industry in 2024. Fascinating prediction. I wonder where they get this from, although that's obviously not just the cannabis industry. That would be ancillary industries as well, which is a 12% growth compared to last year. And apparently to get to this figure, MJ Biz Daily applied some epic math by looking at comparable industries. Then they use a standard multiplier to estimate projected sales for rec and med cannabis. And so take from that what you will, but notice that this isn't just the cannabis industry, it's them and everyone else that is pretty much helped by ending cannabis prohibition, because legal cannabis just joins the economy, and it's obviously a massive public health victory and a massive legal economy victory if you allow it to happen. And so just to touch on that, 32.1 billion is the US cannabis industry in 2024 based on projections. And hopefully after we get Schedule 3 and some ease of restrictions, we see that rise to 58 billion by 2030. Wouldn't that be lovely? And you just think that the less restrictions and the easier access to this amazing medicine, we could see that number even go up, especially globally. And so with that from WeShoot 420, just wanted to share this from Headset as I found it. Headset gathered receipts accounting for 83.6 million in sales across US and Canada, with over 6 million units sold. And so I'm going to play it at 2.5 speed and with the sound off, because of course if I play it fast, the music's going to sound even more terrible. But very interesting. America lights up on this day because they want to spend legal dollars on legal cannabis. So let me know how much you spent on 420 or what you bought in the comments. Curious. And that is it from Headset. From Green Market Report, headline says first quarter cannabis industry sales indicate seasonal lull, yet year-over-year figures are up for most states. So this sounds a lot more important than the headline, at least. And so we can quickly zoom through each. Michigan, after the first quarter, are at 793 million. Sales fell 1% sequentially, but are up 24% year over year. Yeah, that's definitely more promising. Bigger takeaway, Illinois logged 493 million in sales first quarter, down 4% from the fourth quarter, but up 6% year over year, of course, because the fourth quarter has December, which is record sales. Florida, despite being medical only, reported 488 million in sales for the first quarter. That's an improvement of 1% over the fourth quarter and a whopping 4% year over year, because Floridians want their medicine and they get access to that cheaper non-addictive medicinal alternative. Massachusetts, first quarter sales fell 3% but rose 4% over last year. Good for them. It is the Western markets that continue to struggle more, likely just because the weather is so much better there and there's accessible cannabis likely year-round, as they fell from a peak of 380 million in Q1 of 2022 to 318 million in Q1 of 2024. So yikes. Just imagine where Trulieve would be had they never bought Harvest Health and Recreation. While Maryland, the most recent market to turn on for adult use in July of 2023, looks like the fourth quarter was 273 million, and this most recent quarter was essentially flat or the same as 273 million, which I think is great because 273 million and Q4 would have saw a record December. So the fact that Jan, February, and March is pretty much flat or the same as what we saw in October, November, December, I'd take that as a win. And so more here if you wanted to pause to read. As always, link will be in the comments though. And just to highlight, Massachusetts saw record-breaking cannabis sales on 420, pushing state across 6 billion mark for rec purchases. Well, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, just wanted to share, as interestingly enough, last September they exceeded the $5 billion mark, and then just now, it seems April, they exceeded the $6 billion mark. So chugging along just like Colorado, one of the first states to do it. The old blueprint. And so just going to leave this here if you wanted to pause to read or check it out. As always, link will be in the comments. But from New Jersey, NJ Biz, as New Jersey records 201 mil in adult use cannabis sales for Q1. How cute. Kind of pathetic though. Obviously, it's good that they've grown from 24 stores to 130, but if they doubled the stores, tripled, quadrupled, 10x, they'd have 10x the revenue. It's just a fact. And so nice to see them at least seeing the benefit of opening more stores, and that incentivizes them to want to do more of that, and they are doing more of that. So good to see that out of New Jersey, and a bit more data points here out of 420 in New Jersey. If you're interested, you can pause to read. So moving along though, from the Dank Informer, Florida Office of Medical Cannabis Use this past week from April 26th to May 2nd. I'm just going to scroll down to show the qualified patient count. We hit 880,000 finally, 596 on top of that. So love to see that number slowly going up every month. And just to go through the visuals, total flower sales in ounces by company this past week, you can pause to read. Total THC sales in milligrams by company this past week, you can pause to read. Total CBD sales milligrams by company this past week, you can pause to read. And total dispensing locations by company this past week. Pause to read if you're interested. And with that, from High Finance, growth in the cannabis market is being driven by the Midwest and East Coast. We know that, especially from new markets coming on. Ohio should be coming on in the next month, because I think it's June and now we're in May. And we can see this by looking at Q1 sales of each part of the country and break that down, highlighting the West is down 12%, but the Midwest up 55% and the East Coast up 61%, carrying most of the team on its shoulders. And so this is a cool little snippet from BDSA. You can check it out, Q1 retail sales, and how each area of the country has contributed to the growth over time. And of course, that's all driven just by new states coming online. And fortunately, we've got Florida coming, we've got Ohio, we've got Pennsylvania. So the wind is behind our backs. Well, another one here, detailed breakdown of Q1 sales versus prior years. And so here you can pause to read. Again, the source is BDSA. Check that out if you are interested. And so wanted to share some news from MSOs as Verano strengthens Connecticut retail footprint with the opening of Zenleaf. Nantucket, the company's third social equity joint venture location and fifth dispensary statewide. And so if you're interested in Verano, just wanted to share this as they, again, continue to focus on what they can control, putting their head down and expanding their footprint, before the floodgates open. So link in the comments. Well, Green Thumb, this is from last week, but I missed a few stories, so figured I'd share it. Green Thumb continues its Florida retail expansion with the opening of Rise Dispensary, continuing to open more stores in Florida. Again, seeing the writing on the wall, focusing on what he can control, putting his head down, and preparing for when the floodgates open. So more here if you're interested in Green Thumb, if you're an investor, much like Verano. Definitely those stories are more interesting if you are invested in those companies yourself. While there was an interview with Pablo Zuanic and CEO of Cresco, Charles Bachtel, a 45-minute conversation here, rescheduling with Charles Bachtel. I have not listened to this yet, but I do plan on doing so. This link will be in the comments for anyone interested in tuning in. And so some snippets from investment firms, as always, take these with a grain of salt, but you can compare this with everything that the best cannabis, whether it's researchers and investors and influencers on Twitter are coming up with, and then you can compare all of this. But Echelon on US Cannabis, with the DEA set to formally publish a Schedule III notice in the coming days, weeks, we believe it's very likely cannabis will be officially reclassified as a Schedule III substance within 12 months, potentially the best case scenario. And so that is a conservative best case scenario, I would say. I think Boris's is more of a best case scenario and like something that could happen really quick. But hey, take from that what you will. We've got a few perspectives. While ATB on US Cannabis, we think rescheduling is far from being fully priced in. MSOs in our coverage still trade at an average enterprise value divided by EBITDA of 9.3x, a massive discount to sector valuation of 11.8x, which does not consider rescheduling or other catalysts such as Florida. So some very technical jargon in there, but this is from ATB, and they think, one, we expect the OMB could sign off and the DEA release its rescheduling proposal, and they use the word imminently. Bastards. 2, we expect the DEA to open a 60-day comment period over the proposal and the matter to be subject to litigation. And 3, we think rescheduling is far from being fully priced in. So take from that what you will, but I do agree with a lot of their takes. Well, a good one from We Street 420, essentially highlighting someone who's been in this industry for so long and likely doesn't get surprised by much, sharing a tweet from Charting Cycles saying 7.3 million dark pool print today, the largest he's ever seen on this ticker. And again, speculation here, but it seems like some people are making big bets on the momentum to continue, and seems someone down here says safer bets coming in hot. We don't know what this means, but it just leads you to believe that people are betting on the momentum continuing and everything else playing out in our favor, as opposed to the opposite. Because obviously the science is in our favor, which is the best part, right? Now, another snippet from Do the Right Thing. Interesting quote from Scott's Miracle Grow CEO. I've been told Trump is open to cannabis in Florida. I wonder if anyone else has heard something similar. And so again, take this with a grain of salt. It's just mainly a thing that, well, if people are concerned that the Republicans, and if Trump were to get into power, that he would basically cut off or reverse any of the progress, chances are very unlikely, because the cannabis is more of a states' rights thing and a personal rights thing. And ultimately, the fact is Trump is one of the 3 candidates that will be votable for in November. And so ideally, if you have all 3 candidates that aren't going to reverse cannabis or are going to, be in favor for this long overdue reform and progress, then hey, that's a great thing. Certainly better than having him act like Ron DeSantis, isn't it? And so more on that Canopy news that we got on Friday. So the Dales report summarizing the breakdown of Canopy financing that was announced this morning or yesterday morning, Friday, May 3rd. Single institutional investor basically giving $50 million to Canopy. And you think after all this time, Canopy's been such a shit show, who would give them money unless there was a guarantee that, all of this was going to allow them to finally get those U.S. assets and they'd be a worthwhile investment over all this time? Now, I've seen a ton of speculation too on how it seems like shorts could be working with Canopy through the CEO, David Klein, and all that. And I don't know what's true, but just don't want to get too off track either. Either way, converted issue, common shares at this price Canadian, warrants at this forced with conversion. I'm not so technical that I don't really understand what all this jargon is. But main thing is just wanted to share the summary from them. This link will be in the comments if you wanted to read through it. But it's certainly promising that anyone is willing to put money back into Canopy. Leads us to believe that they know something, especially if there is some shenanigans and it is the shorts figuring out a way to cover so they don't get burned and then turn long, fucking bastards. While on top of that, PR Newswire, Sunstream USA poised to acquire cannabis assets. And so reading through this too, it's very complicated and I'm just not well versed with the finance background. So I don't necessarily want to just read it and give someone the wrong idea, but highlighting what I think is just the main thing. Based on Sundial's opinions of Counsel and Nasdaq's review, Sundial is satisfied that the Sunstream USA group structure conforms to applicable laws and is not aware of any reason that would cause Sundial to not be compliant with Nasdaq listings rules because Nasdaq currently already allows Sundial, right? And so if Sundial's doing this, why can they stay on the Nasdaq and then MSOs can't uplist? So I think that is the biggest takeaway from it. I don't know when this goes into effect. That could be, to be determined. Anticipates further update in the parallel and Skymint transactions alongside its Q2 operational results. And so that will likely be coming soon, but main thing, if you wanted to pause to read, just don't know when all this is set to go into effect. And so if anyone understands this better and is willing to summarize it in the comments, please do. That would be awesome. And with that, I wanted to share a good laugh with you all as we continue to expose these propagandist frauds. And this is just hilarious because Weed Street 420 sharing, apparently these losers, Kevin Sabat and Luke Nelly Furtado, have a podcast called The Drug Report. And I'm going to share with you Luke's voice on The Drug Report. I'm going to speed it up a bit because I don't want to listen to him too long, but we're going to get a taste of his voice. Sam on DEA rescheduling. We heard rumors that potentially that announcement could be coming this week, whatever the decision may be. And isn't it crazy that Kevin Sabat, of all people, was right in being the source that pretty much called it that the next day we got the announcement? Like, you can't make this shit up. We have some pretty decent intel that it's moving through the process. There's no doubt about that. So listen up and just remember the voice of the person that starts off, okay?
Ferrados, and welcome back. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. This is the TDR podcast, and today we're going to talk about marijuana rescheduling. That is obviously a huge topic of conversation. Everyone is waiting anxiously to hear what that result is going to be. HHS made a recommendation for Schedule 3 status for marijuana, and that now sits with the DEA, who's currently doing their review process.
And so these are the bullshit propagandists. Just remember that.
We are talking about it today because we've heard rumors that potentially that announcement could be coming this week, whatever the decision may be. And so joining me today to chat about rescheduling and what we're hearing and all those other such things is Kevin Sabat. Kevin,
hey, Luke, you're doing well. Everyone's doing well.
Great. Awesome.
Kevin Sabat, great. Oh, yeah. How you doing?
First up, I guess let's just start off with what we're hearing and kind of what your sense is of where things stand today.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of chatter, and we've seen this maybe, 6 or 7 times in the last year where, it's imminent, it's coming. But we have some pretty decent intel that it's moving through the process. There's no doubt about it. Previous process.
When are these clowns going to come out of the closet together? Now, remember that voice, right? Luke Nelly Furtado right here.
Ferrados, and welcome back. I hope you had a wonderful weekend.
Welcoming us back with his very easy to distinguish voice. Now, check this out.
Luke, thanks for waiting. Go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question for Kevin. I live here in Colorado. We have medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. And recently, a neighbor of mine let me know that her son died by suicide after legally using medical marijuana here in Colorado. I was curious, she said he had a psychotic break and that's what led to it. I was curious, what are we seeing in the science on marijuana and schizophrenia psychosis? And did the Biden administration consider this as it relates to this decision to move marijuana to Schedule 3? Was that in their rationale? I just wanted to know more about that. Thank you.
And you can go first and then we'll let our other guests respond. Mr. Armentano.
Yeah, thanks for giving me a chance to respond. First, to set the record straight, that caller is the deputy director of Kevin's organization.
And what's wild that I think I missed this the first time when I watched, but I think he says, Luke, you can talk now.
Luke, thanks for waiting. Go ahead.
Yeah, he says, Luke, thanks for waiting. Go ahead. And so, I mean, incredible self-awareness for Paul Armentano to just call that out and blatantly expose that. But
thank you. I have a question for Kevin. I live here in Colorado.
So I'm obviously not laughing at the content of anyone dying. It's just I'm laughing at the fact that it's obviously horseshit and that it's just these two guys with however deep their pockets run, but at least we know that they're absolute idiots and morons. And so we've got this. We're going to beat them. And this is our fucking year, everybody. Give yourselves a pat on the back and start getting excited. And so just to highlight as well, Colin Farian, more and more people just calling these fraud losers out. If misinformation was an art, this would be finger painting. The only two calls opposing legalization on C-SPAN were Kevin Sabbath's employees posing as supporters of their cause.
During one of your responses to Mr. Sabbath, you talked about intellectual honesty. The fact of the matter is Mr. Sabbath has displayed no intellectual honesty when he talks to you. That stunt he pulled at the beginning of this show where he had one of his cronies call in without identifying themselves as being a crony shows that he's not intellectually honest.
And he just shook his head as if he did not do that. And he did. What a fucking pathological, narcissistic, sociopathic liar. Fair enough. We just got to be better than him, and it's not hard to do. We're already there. So we continue on. We know that their litigations and their challenges aren't going to win. Just to highlight Todd Harrison sharing what Viridian has to say on US Cannabis after this news. The impact on cash flows from 280E is massive. We estimate that the top 10 companies alone would save over $700 million annually from eliminating 280E, and the industry would save more than twice that amount. So remember, the thesis is still intact, folks. Just took longer than we expected. It's out of our control, but it is still a when, not if scenario. And just looking at the last day, Tuesday, April 30th, 2024, the date of the DEA, quite the spike. And it was a nice day just to remember that, okay, yeah, this is going to come. We just got to be patient. So a few more things to highlight. Oh yeah, Dougie Cast, that goes to show the mindset of a trader versus more of a long-term investor. I mean, I always started reading Warren Buffett. I like to look at Dan's chart videos. That's pretty much the most technical I can get, but I'm just more of like a find value, park your money, sit there, and then sell at the peak. And obviously I've been through the euphoria phase a few times now, and I haven't really been able to zoom out during it and realize, but I think this time around I'm definitely more accustomed. And I still think he's a coward just because he did say at one point, he tweeted that he would hold long and then he did the opposite, so that's what makes him a coward. But hey, fair enough. Doug made money, good for him. So last few, just great tweet from Mike Redeker. I think we're all in the same boat. Never knew we'd learn so much about the DOJ, HHS, DEA, OMB, OLC, but here we are. Not many outside of the ex-echo chamber has any idea. No one knows. This is our little secret, everybody. Either a blessing, opportunity, or a curse, and it's to be determined, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere else with anybody else. So, hey, for all of you that have watched thus far, thank you so much, and hope you keep coming back. And last but not least, got to give a massive shout out to the man, the myth, the legend himself, Don Murphy. Thank you so much, Don, for all you've done for us ultimately. And I got a call from my mom this past week saying that I have a package which arrived, which is likely my Don Murphy shirt. So you best believe I'm going to be wearing that for next week in cannabis. And while this is an older article talking about Maryland getting ready for adult use, no doubt a year in, they're thrilled with the fact that they reformed their laws and have seen all the benefits. And Don, a former lawmaker in Baltimore, would be one of those men to thank. And just wanted to give a big shout out to Don in a sense that there's many people like Don working behind the scenes that we're not paying attention to. But man, now I can almost sort of visualize how difficult it would be to even start these conversations and play politics on a local level, especially in red states that are very anti-cannabis and are paid by their donors to be anti-cannabis. And just to think about all the work that's been done to get us here and how much Don has done in his career that we aren't even aware of, it's just like, man, thank you. Really appreciate it. Of course, you can read through this if you'd like, as it is more of a dive into Don's career in Baltimore as well, tying it to the whole legalization effort and all the work he's put in. Would definitely recommend going through it. But anyways, just thank you, Don, for what you do. And it seems like it's finally getting real, folks. Just try to enjoy yourselves, as it is all out of our control. Plan accordingly for your own situation, but the best is yet to come. And that is it for today's episode. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you next week for This Week in Cannabis.